The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor. Grace Whitmore stood frozen at the charity gala. 7 months pregnant, her husband's hand gripping her elbow, too tight. "My wife gets confused about money," Preston announced to the room. "She wanted to donate $50,000, from my account, of course." Everyone smiled. Poor thing, living off her rich husband's generosity. If only they knew. Grace excused herself to the bathroom, pulled out her phone. She ran, checked the app her husband didn't know existed. Bitcoin holdings, 18,500 coins. Current value, $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion. Her husband had just publicly humiliated her for wanting to spend 50,000, while she secretly owned 150 times his entire net worth. Preston thought she was dependent, powerless, grateful for his support. He had no idea who he was really married to. This is the story of how a forgotten $800 investment became a billion-dollar fortune, how a controlled wife became one of the most powerful women in America, and how one man's greatest mistake was underestimating the woman carrying his child. What happens when the poor wife turns out to be the secret billionaire? Stay with me, because this story is about to get very, very interesting. The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor. Everyone turned to stare. Grace stood frozen in the center of the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall. 7 months pregnant, her hand trembling. Preston's fingers dug into her elbow. "Careful, sweetheart," he said, his voice carried across the room. "You're always so clumsy these days." Heads swiveled back to their conversations. The pianist resumed playing. A waiter appeared with a dustpan. Grace's face burned. She hadn't dropped the glass. Preston had bumped her arm. She'd felt the deliberate pressure of his elbow against hers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's fine." Preston smiled at the circle of tech moguls and their wives surrounding them. "Pregnancy brain. You all know how it is." The women nodded, sympathetic, understanding. Their diamond earrings caught the chandelier light. Grace's hand moved to her belly. The baby kicked, hard, insistent, like a protest. Margaret Whitmore, Preston's mother, adjusted her emerald necklace. She looked at Grace with that particular expression, the one that said Grace should be grateful, should know her place. "Preston was just telling us about your little charity idea," Margaret said. Grace blinked. "My what?" "The donation you wanted to make." Preston's grip tightened on her elbow. "To the children's hospital. $50,000. Grace had mentioned it that morning, over breakfast, a casual suggestion. The gala was raising money for pediatric cancer research. She thought they could contribute. "From my account, of course," Preston continued. His laugh was light, easy. "My wife gets confused about money sometimes. Don't you, darling?" The circle watched her, waiting. "I just thought," Grace started. Her voice came out too quiet. "The children's hospital does important work." "Of course they do," Preston patted her hand. The gesture looked affectionate, felt condescending. "But $50,000, that's a significant amount. We need to discuss these things." "You're right," Grace heard herself say. "I should have asked first." Margaret beamed. "Preston provides everything. You're very fortunate, dear." The other wives murmured agreement. Grace saw it in their eyes. They thought she was pampered, spoiled, a young wife living off her successful husband's money. If only they knew. "Excuse me," Grace said. "I need to use the restroom." She walked away, slowly, carefully. Her heels clicked against the marble. She felt their eyes following her, judging her swollen ankles, her maternity dress, her inability to handle her champagne. The bathroom was empty, cream marble, gold fixtures, classical music piped through hidden speakers. Grace locked herself in a stall, sat down on the closed toilet lid, pulled out her phone. Her hands shook as she opened the app. The one Preston didn't know existed. The one connected to accounts he'd never seen. Bitcoin price, $67,234. Her holdings, 18,500 coins. She did the math automatically. Her MIT education hadn't been wasted. Net worth, $1,243,829,000. $1.2 billion. And her husband had just publicly scolded her for wanting to donate 50,000. Grace checked her phone. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. The numbers didn't change. She sat there in the designer bathroom of the Metropolitan Museum, 7 months pregnant, 7 months, wearing a dress that cost $4,000. Preston had bought it for her. He'd reminded her of that fact 3 times. She owned enough money to buy the entire museum, and she couldn't donate $50,000 to sick children without her husband's permission. The baby kicked again, harder this time. "I know," Grace whispered to her belly. "I know." She heard the bathroom door open, voices. 2 women. She recognized them from the gala circle. "Did you see her face?" one said. "Poor thing." "Well, she should know better." The other woman's heels clicked to the mirror. Preston Whitmore isn't the kind of man who appreciates his wife making financial decisions without consulting him. How much did his startup sell for? 8 million, maybe a little more. And she had what? Nothing? She was a programmer or something. Made maybe 60,000 a year, if that. Silence. The sound of lipstick being applied. Still, 50,000 is nothing to him. It's not about the money, it's about respect, control. My husband's the same way. All successful men are. They left. The door swung shut. The classical music filled the silence. Grace sat very still. Her heart pounded in her chest. They thought Preston made 8 million and sound impressive. They thought he was being reasonable. They thought she was lucky. She had 150 times his net worth, and nobody knew. Grace stood up, smoothed her dress, looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a pregnant woman. Tired eyes, expensive dress, diamond studs Preston had given her for their anniversary. Everything about her screamed wealthy wife, dependent, provided for. She'd built this cage herself, brick by brick, month by month. The worst part? She'd done it on purpose. Grace washed her hands, reapplied her lipstick, took a deep breath. She walked back to the gala, found Preston holding court with a group of investors. He saw her, smiled, warm, loving. "There's my beautiful wife," he said. He pulled her close, kissed her temple. His hand rested on her belly. To everyone watching, they looked perfect. The successful tech entrepreneur and his pregnant wife. The American dream. Only Grace knew the truth. She was the richest person in the room, by far, and she was trapped. Grace sat in the passenger seat of Preston's Tesla. Silence filled the car. Not comfortable silence. The kind that pressed down on your chest. Preston drove, his jaw tight. His hands gripped the steering wheel. "You embarrassed me tonight," he said finally. Grace looked out the window. Boston lights blurred past. "I dropped a glass. It was an accident." "Not the glass." His voice was sharp. "The donation, bringing that up without discussing it with me first. I mentioned it this morning at breakfast." Mentioned, not discussed. Preston took the exit toward their neighborhood. "There's a difference, boys." Grace's hand moved to her belly. The baby was quiet now, sleeping probably. She envied that, the ability to just sleep through conflict. $50,000 isn't pocket change, Grace. She almost laughed. Almost told him $50,000 was 0.004% of her net worth. Rounding error, less than he spent on his car. Instead, she said nothing. "I know you're emotional right now." Preston's voice softened, the way it always did when he was about to say something cruel disguised as concern. "Pregnancy hormones, they make women irrational. I'm not irrational. You wanted to donate $50,000 without talking to me. That's irrational." They pulled into their driveway. The house rose before them. 4,000 square feet. Victorian style. Beautiful. Preston had bought it 3 years ago. He reminded her of that regularly. Grace reached for the door handle. "Wait." Preston turned off the car. "I'm not angry, I'm concerned. You don't understand money the way I do. That's okay. That's why you have me." Grace looked at him, really looked at him. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way? Had she just been too in love to see it? "I understand money," she said quietly. "Baby." He reached for her hand. "You made 60,000 a year as a programmer." "I'd already sold my startup when we met. I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm just stating facts. Facts. You brought nothing financially to this marriage. That's not a criticism. It's just reality I provide for us. That's my role. Your role, Zitger, is taking care of yourself and our baby. The baby kicked, like punctuation, like agreement that something was very wrong here. Grace opened the car door. I'm tired. Of course you are. Preston came around, helped her out. His hand on her elbow again, always guiding, always controlling. Let me help you inside. She wanted to pull away, wanted to scream that she didn't need his help, that she could buy and sell him 100 times over. But she didn't. She let him guide her up the steps, into the house he bought, the house he never let her forget he bought. Inside, the house was dark, cold. Grace turned on lights as she walked through the kitchen. Everything was exactly where it should be, exactly where Preston wanted it. I'm going to bed, she said. I have some work to finish up. Preston kissed her forehead. Don't wait up. Grace climbed the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. She passed the nursery, already decorated, yellow walls, white furniture, everything perfect, everything chosen by Preston's mother. Grace hadn't picked anything. Every suggestion she'd made had been gently redirected, politely overruled. In their bedroom, she undressed slowly, her reflection caught in the mirror. 7 months pregnant, stretch marks, swollen feet, a body that was doing something miraculous, creating life. Preston used to tell her she was beautiful. Now he commented on her weight, her clumsiness, her inability to fit into her old clothes. Grace put on her pajamas, sat on the edge of the bed, picked up her phone. The Bitcoin app opened. She stared at the numbers. They'd become her secret, her salvation, her proof that she wasn't who Preston said she was. She scrolled back through her transaction history, back to 2009, January 15th, 100 Bitcoin purchased, $800 total, $8 per coin. She'd been 23, a graduate student at MIT, working on her thesis about cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. Her advisor had mentioned Bitcoin, a new experiment, interesting technology, maybe worth a small investment. Grace had taken $800 from her savings account, everything she'd had after paying rent. She'd bought the coins, set up a wallet, written down the recovery phrase on a piece of paper. Then she'd forgotten about it. She'd finished her degree, graduated, started job hunting, met Preston at a tech conference in San Francisco. He'd been the keynote speaker. Successful, charming, confident. He'd pursued her. Flowers, dinners, weekend trips. He'd made her feel special, chosen, important. They'd married fast. Too fast, her friends had said. But Grace had been in love. She'd thought she'd found her person, and she had been happy. For a while, she'd worked at a small tech firm, wrote code, attended meetings, came home to Preston. They talked about starting a family someday, bought this house, made plans. Then came the miscarriage. Grace's hand moved unconsciously to her belly. That had been 2 years ago, 13 weeks pregnant. One day everything was fine. The next day, it wasn't. Preston had been supportive, loving, protective, too protective. You need to take it easy, he had said. Maybe quit work for a while. Stress isn't good for you. She'd resisted. She liked working, liked having her own money, her own life outside their marriage. But Preston had been persistent, gentle but firm, like water wearing down stone. When she'd gotten pregnant again 6 months ago, Preston had pounced. This time we're doing everything right, he'd said. High-risk pregnancy. The doctor said, reduce stress. That means no work. The doctor said reduce stress, not no stress. Working is stressful. Let me take care of you. It had sounded romantic, caring, the devoted husband making sure his wife stayed healthy. But then came the small changes. Her work email. Preston suggested she give it up. You're not working. Why do you need it? Her car. Mine is safer, more reliable. Use mine instead. Her credit cards. Let's consolidate our finances. Easier to track spending. Better for taxes. Month by month, week by week, Grace's independence had been dismantled. Piece by piece, she hadn't noticed. Or maybe she had noticed and hadn't wanted to admit it. She'd been scared. scared of losing another baby, scared of making the wrong choice. So she'd let Preston make all the choices. Until 3 months ago, Grace remembered the moment perfectly. She'd been cleaning out her old laptop, the one from grad school, planning to donate it. She'd found an old folder, cryptocurrency research, notes from her thesis, and the Bitcoin wallet file. Her hands had trembled as she'd opened it, as she'd restored the wallet using her old recovery phrase, 100 Bitcoin still there, untouched. She'd forgotten completely. The coins had sat there for 16 years, through grad school, through meeting Preston, through marriage, through pregnancy. She'd checked the price, $65,000 per coin, $6.5 million. Grace had nearly thrown up. Morning sickness, shock, terror, joy, everything at once. She'd spent 3 days researching, learning, understanding what she had. She'd split the coins across multiple wallets, created elaborate security, set up offshore accounts through law firms that specialize in privacy. She'd never spent a single coin, but she'd watched the price, daily, as Preston had lectured her about budgeting, about asking permission for purchases, about being financially responsible. She'd become a billionaire by accident, while her husband treated her like a child who couldn't be trusted with money. Grace looked at her phone, at the numbers, at her secret. She thought about telling Preston, imagined his face, his shock, his anger, because he would be angry. She knew that with absolute certainty. Not happy for her, not proud, angry. He'd want control of it. He'd want to manage it, invest it, make decisions about it. He'd make it his, the way he'd made everything his. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca Foster, her college roommate. They'd been close at MIT, drifted apart after graduation, reconnected recently. The text said, "How was the gala? Call me tomorrow." Rebecca was one of the only friends Grace had left. Preston had subtly discouraged most of her other friendships. Too busy, too demanding, too negative. Grace typed back, "It was fine. We'll call." She deleted the message thread. Preston sometimes checked her phone for her own good, he said, to make sure she wasn't stressing herself with work emails or her drama. Grace set her phone on the nightstand, turned off the light, lay down in the dark. The baby kicked, a gentle flutter. "I know," Grace whispered again. "Something has to change." But what, and how, and when? She was 7 months pregnant, financially dependent, isolated from friends, living in a house owned by her husband. Except none of that was actually true. She just couldn't prove it without revealing everything. And revealing everything felt impossible, dangerous, wrong. Grace closed her eyes, tried to sleep, failed. Downstairs, she heard Preston's voice. On the phone, laughing, talking about the gala, about how well it went, about how much money he'd raised for charity. He didn't mention Grace, didn't mention her dropped glass or her inappropriate donation suggestion. To him, she'd already been erased, edited out of the story, reduced to pregnant wife, dependent, provided for, grateful. Grace's hand moved to her belly, to the baby growing inside her, to the daughter she was creating. Because she knew it was a girl, she'd known from the moment of conception. Deep certainty. "I'm not going to raise you in this," Grace whispered. "I'm not going to teach you that love looks like control, that care looks like erasure." The baby kicked, agreement, approval, demand for action. "But I don't know how to leave," Grace admitted. "I don't know how to tell him. I don't know what to do." She lay there in the dark, pregnant, rich beyond measure, and completely powerless. Or was she? The thought struck like lightning, illuminating, terrifying. She wasn't powerless. She just convinced herself she was. She'd handed Preston the keys to her cage and called it love, but the cage door had been unlocked all along. Grace opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling, at the shadows. Tomorrow, she'd figure it out. Tomorrow, she'd start taking back her life. Tonight, she just needed to survive, to breathe, to remember who she'd been before Preston, before pregnancy, before fear. She'd been Grace Thompson, MIT graduate, computer science, thesis on decentralized finance, smart enough to buy Bitcoin in 2009. She was still that person. Under the fear, under the control, under the carefully constructed cage, that Grace was still in there somewhere, and it was time for her to come back. 3 months ago, before tonight, before the gala, before everything changed. Grace had been 7 months pregnant then too. No, wait, 4 months pregnant, still showing but not huge yet, still able to bend over without grunting. She'd been cleaning, obsessively cleaning, nesting, the pregnancy books called it, the uncontrollable urge to organize everything, to prepare. Preston was at work, 10-hour days, sometimes 12, building his new startup, another app, another disruption. He loved that word, disruption. Grace had been alone in the house, her house now, Preston's house always. She'd started with the bedroom, then the closets, then the storage room. That's where she'd found the old laptop, her grad school computer, battered Dell, covered in coding stickers, MIT logo, Free Software Foundation. A cartoon penguin. She'd meant to donate it years ago, had forgotten. It had sat in a plastic bin, buried under old textbooks and research papers. Grace had plugged it in. The battery was dead. She'd found the charger, waited for it to boot up. The desktop background was a photo of Boston from her apartment window, 23 years old, whole life ahead of her. No idea what was coming. Grace had clicked through old folders, photos, papers, code repositories, all the detritus of graduate education. Then she'd found it, a folder labeled Crypto Research. Her thesis work, notes on Bitcoin, Ethereum proposals, decentralized systems, the future of money. She'd remembered her advisor, Professor Martinez. He'd been excited about Bitcoin, passionate even. This is going to change everything, he'd said. Oh, I know. Mark my words. Grace had been skeptical, interested, but skeptical. She'd written her thesis, done her research, and then, almost as an afterthought, bought some coins. The wallet file was still there, encrypted, password protected. Grace had stared at it for a long time, trying to remember the password. She'd used the same password for everything back then. Terrible security, obvious choices. She'd typed it in, her childhood dog's name plus her graduation year. The wallet opened. Grace's heart had stopped, actually stopped, then started again. Too fast, too hard. 100 Bitcoin, transaction date, January 15th, 2009. Purchase price, $8 per coin. She'd grabbed her phone, Googled current Bitcoin price, her hands shaking so badly she could barely type. $65,212 per coin. Grace had done the math. $6,521,200. She'd run to the bathroom, thrown up. Morning sickness. Shock. Pure terror. $6.5 million. Sitting there, forgotten, for 16 years. She'd sat on the bathroom floor, pregnant, shaking, crying, laughing, everything at once. Preston had $8 million, his entire net worth from selling a startup. He talked about it constantly. 8 million, his achievement, his success, his proof of worth. Grace had 6.5 million, and she'd gotten it by forgetting about it. She'd spent the next 3 days in a fog. Research, learning, understanding. Bitcoin had changed since 2009. It was real now, legitimate. People actually used it, traded it, built wealth from it. And Grace only 100 coins. She'd created new wallets, safer ones, more secure. Split the coins across multiple addresses, set up cold storage, hardware wallets, everything the experts recommended. She'd never told Preston. Every night he came home, asked about her day. She'd smile, say it was fine. She'd organized the nursery. She'd rested. She'd read baby books. She never mentioned the $6.5 million growing in her accounts because it wasn't 6.5 million anymore. The price kept climbing. 66,000, 67,000, 68,000. Now 3 months later, it was 1.2 billion. The coins had multiplied in value. Her secret had grown into something massive, impossible, terrifying. Grace remembered the first time she'd almost told him, 2 months ago. They'd been discussing baby expenses. Preston had been calculating pods, daycare, diapers, formula if breastfeeding didn't work. It's going to come expensive, he'd said, but don't worry, I can handle it. I make enough for both of us. Grace had opened her mouth, almost said it. I have money too, a lot of money, more than you can imagine. But something had stopped her. An instinct, a warning. She'd seen the look on Preston's face, the satisfaction, the pride. He liked being the provider. The one with money, the one in control. If she told him she had money, what would happen to that satisfaction? Where would his pride go? Grace had closed her mouth, said nothing, let the moment pass. She'd told herself she'd tell him later, when the timing was right, when she figured out how to say it. But days became weeks, weeks became months, and the secret grew heavier, harder to share, more dangerous to reveal. Now, lying in bed after the gala humiliation, Grace realized something. She'd known all along, deep down, under the rationalizations and excuses. She couldn't tell Preston, not now, maybe not ever, because Preston didn't love her. Not really. He loved the idea of her, the pregnant wife, the dependent woman, the person who needed him. If she had money, she didn't need him. And if she didn't need him, who was he? Grace's phone buzzed, a notification. Bitcoin price update, $67,500. Her net worth, $1,248,750,000. She'd gained nearly $5 million since dinner, just sitting here, lying in bed, doing nothing. Preston was downstairs, working, building his new startup, hoping to sell it for maybe 10 million if he was lucky. Grace had 124 times that, and growing. The irony was almost funny, almost. Grace heard footsteps on the stairs, Preston coming to bed. She closed her phone quickly, pretended to be asleep. He entered the room quietly, undressed in the dark, slid into bed beside her. His hand rested on her hip. You awake? Grace kept her breathing steady, even, asleep. Preston sighed, rolled over. Within minutes, his breathing deepened. He was out. Grace opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling again. The shadows, the future. She thought about her mother, dead for 17 years now. Breast cancer. She'd fought it for 3 years, suffered through treatment, never complained. But Grace remembered something her mother had said, near the end, in the hospital, too sick to hide the truth anymore. I should have left your father, her mother had whispered. Years ago, when I still could, when I still had time. Why didn't you? Grace had asked. 15 years old, not understanding. I was scared. I didn't have money. I didn't have options. I thought I was trapped. Were you trapped? Her mother had smiled sadly. No, baby. The prison door was unlocked the whole time. I was just too scared to try the handle. Grace's mother had died 2 weeks later. Having never left, having never tried the handle, Grace put her hand on her belly, on the baby, on her daughter. I'm not going to die trapped, she whispered. I'm not going to teach you that prison is safety. That control is love. The baby kicked, strong, insistent. I know, Grace said, I know. But knowing and doing were different things. Grace knew she had money, knew she had options, knew she wasn't actually trapped. But she felt trapped. That was the thing about prison. Sometimes the bars were real. Sometimes they were just in your head. And sometimes you built them yourself, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. Grace had handed Preston the power. She'd given him control. She'd played the role he wanted, dependent, grateful, small, because it had felt easier, safer, less frightening than being big, being powerful, being herself. But easy wasn't the same as right. Safe wasn't the same as happy. Small wasn't the same as loved. Grace closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she'd deal with it tomorrow. Except tomorrow had been saying that for 3 months. Tomorrow never actually came. The baby kicked again, harder this time, demanding. Okay, Grace whispered. Okay, I hear you. She had to do something, had to change something, had to stop pretending this was okay. But what? And how? And when? Grace didn't have the answers. Not yet. But she knew who might. Rebecca Foster, her college roommate. They'd been close at MIT, lived together for 2 years, knew each other's secrets, dreams, fears. Rebecca was a lawyer now, financial law, estate planning. She'd mentioned it last month, when they'd reconnected, when Grace had been desperate for a friend, someone from before Preston. Before all this, Rebecca would know what to do, how to protect herself, how to protect the money, how to protect the baby. Grace made a decision, right there, in the dark, lying next to her sleeping husband. Tomorrow she'd call Rebecca, tell her everything, ask for help. The secret was too heavy to carry alone anymore. The cage was too small, the fear too big. Something had to change, and change always started with one small step, one scary choice, one moment of courage. Tomorrow, Grace promised herself, tomorrow, everything changes. The baby kicked one more time, gentler now, settling down, content, like she knew, like she understood, like she was saying yes, finally. Thank you, it's about time. Grace smiled in the dark, put her hand over the kicks, connected to her daughter, to the future, to possibility. We're going to be okay, she whispered. Both of us, I promise. And for the first time in months, Grace actually believed it. The next morning, Whole Foods parking lot, Cambridge, 10 in the morning, Grace sat in her car, Preston's car, the one he let her use, the one he reminded her was safer, more reliable, better for the baby. She'd been sitting here for 20 minutes, staring at her phone, Rebecca's number on the screen. Call her. Just call her. Press the button. But Grace couldn't move. Her thumb hovered over the call button, frozen. What would she even say? Hi, Rebecca, remember me? Your old roommate, the one who disappeared into her marriage? I need help. I'm trapped. Except I'm not really trapped because I secretly have $1.2 billion. But my husband doesn't know. And I'm scared to tell him, and I don't know what to do. It sounded insane. It was insane. Grace's phone buzzed, a text from Preston. Don't forget milk and those crackers I like, the expensive ones. The expensive ones, $8 for a box of crackers. Preston bought them without thinking, thought nothing of spending $8. Grace had turned $800 into $1.2 billion. But sure, she'd get his crackers. Grace got out of the car. Her belly made everything harder, getting out of cars. Walking, breathing, existing. Inside Whole Foods, everything was bright, clean, organic, expensive. Grace grabbed a cart, started shopping, milk, crackers, vegetables, all the things Preston liked, approved of, wanted in their house. She was in the produce section when she heard it. Grace? Grace Thompson? Grace turned. A woman, 40-something, professional, familiar, very familiar. Rebecca? Grace's voice came out, strangled. Rebecca Foster stood there, tailored suit, confident posture, lawyer through and through. She looked exactly the same, a little older, but the same warm eyes, same direct gaze. Oh my God, Rebecca said, I was just thinking about you. I texted you last night about... She stopped, stared at Grace's belly. You're pregnant. 7 months, Grace said automatically. That's wonderful. Rebecca's smile was genuine. Congratulations. Thank you. They stood there, awkward. Too much time had passed. Too many years of not talking, not seeing each other. How have you been? Rebecca asked. Grace opened her mouth to say fine, to lie, to perform. Instead, she burst into tears, right there in the produce section of Whole Foods, surrounded by organic kale and overpriced apples. Grace cried, big, ugly sobs, the kind that came from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd been ignoring for months, years maybe. Oh, honey, Rebecca said. She moved closer, put her hand on Grace's arm. What's wrong? Grace couldn't answer, couldn't speak, just cried. Rebecca looked around, made a decision. Come on, let's go to my car. She took Grace's elbow, guided her out of the store, left both their carts behind. walked Grace to a silver Lexus in the parking lot. They sat in Rebecca's car, Grace in the passenger seat, still crying, still unable to stop. Rebecca handed her tissues, waited, didn't push, just sat there, present, patient. Finally, Grace's breathing slowed. The tears stopped. She wiped her face, looked at Rebecca. "I'm sorry," Grace said. "Don't be sorry." Rebecca's voice was gentle. "What's going on?" "I don't know where to start." "Start anywhere." Grace took a shaky breath. "Do you remember my thesis at MIT?" Rebecca frowned. "About cryptocurrency? Bitcoin?" "Yeah." Grace twisted the tissue in her hands. "And do you remember when Professor Martinez suggested we actually buy some as an experiment?" "I remember. I didn't have any money. You had like $800 saved up." Rebecca paused. "Wait, did you actually buy Bitcoin?" Grace nodded, couldn't speak, just nodded. Rebecca stared at her, understanding dawning. "You didn't." "I did. 100 coins, $8 each." "Holy shit." Rebecca's eyes went wide. "Grace, do you still have them?" Grace nodded again. "Do you know what they're worth?" Rebecca grabbed her phone, started typing. "Bitcoin is at like 67,000 right now. That means—" She stopped, did the math, looked at Grace with shock. $6.7 million. $1.2 billion, Grace whispered. "What?" "I didn't buy 100 coins. The amount I bought was equal to 100 coins then. But with splits and growth and—" Grace's voice cracked. "It's $1.2 billion now." The silence in the car was deafening. Rebecca stared at her, mouth open, speechless. "I forgot about them," Grace continued. "I found the wallet file 3 months ago. I've been sitting on this secret ever since. And I can't tell Preston. I can't tell anyone. And tonight at this gala, he humiliated me for wanting to donate $50,000 to a children's hospital. He told everyone I don't understand money, that I brought nothing to our marriage, that he provides for me." The words tumbled out, faster and faster. Everything. The control, the isolation, the way Preston had slowly dismantled her independence, the post-nup he kept mentioning, the way he checked her phone, made her ask permission, treated her like a child. Rebecca listened, her face growing harder with each word, angrier. When Grace finally stopped talking, Rebecca was silent for a long moment. "Grace," she said finally, "you need to leave him." "I can't." "Yes, you can. You have $1.2 billion. But he doesn't know that, and if I tell him, he'll try to control it, take it, make it his." Rebecca nodded. "I understand, but Grace, what you're describing is financial abuse. Classic pattern. And you're pregnant. That makes you even more vulnerable." "I know. Do you?" Rebecca turned in her seat, looked at Grace directly. "Because from where I'm sitting, you have all the power. Preston has 8 million. You have 150 times that. You can leave right now, today. You can set yourself up, set your baby up. You never have to ask his permission for anything ever again." Grace felt tears welling up again. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple. You're just scared," which is valid. "But Grace, you can't raise a baby in that environment. You know that." "I know." "Then what are you waiting for?" "I don't know how," Grace's voice broke. "I don't know how to leave, how to tell him, how to protect the money, how to protect myself. I'm 7 months pregnant. I feel like I can barely breathe. And the thought of doing this, of actually leaving, it's terrifying," Rebecca finished. "I know. But you know what's more terrifying? Staying, teaching your daughter that this is what love looks like, that control is care, that making yourself small is how you stay safe." The words hit like a slap, true and painful. Grace looked at Rebecca, her old friend, her roommate, the person who'd known her before Preston, before all this. "Will you help me?" Grace asked. "Of course," Rebecca said immediately. "That's what I do. Financial law, asset protection. I can help you structure everything. Protect the Bitcoin. Make sure Preston can't touch it. Set you up so you're financially independent and he can't do anything about it. Won't that take time? Legal work?" Paperwork? Some, but we can move fast if we need to. Rebecca pulled out her phone. First things first, we need to make sure your Bitcoin is actually secure. You said you split it across wallets? Yes, multiple cold storage wallets, hardware devices, seed phrases written down and stored separately. Good, that's good. And it's in your name? Not joint with Preston? All in my name. Purchased before we met. He has no legal claim to it. Even better. Rebecca was typing notes. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to come to my office today. We're going to review everything, set up proper legal structures, offshore accounts if necessary. Create a wall between you and Preston that he can't breach. He's going to be angry. Let him be angry. He doesn't get to control you anymore. Rebecca looked up. Grace, you're about to become one of the richest women in America. You can handle an angry man. Grace wanted to believe her, wanted to feel that confidence, that power, but all she felt was scared and tired and confused. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted. You can, you will. Rebecca reached over, squeezed Grace's hand, and I'll be with you every step of the way. You're not alone anymore, okay? Grace nodded, wiped her eyes, took a shaky breath, okay. They sat there for a moment, two old friends, reconnected, ready to fight. Grace checked her phone. Preston had texted again. Where are you? You've been gone over an hour. I need to go, Grace said. Preston's expecting me. Call me tonight, after he's asleep. We'll make a plan. Okay. Grace got out of the car, started walking back to her own vehicle. Halfway there, she stopped, turned back. Rebecca had rolled down her window. You okay? Thank you, Grace said, for not judging me, for helping me. Grace, Rebecca's voice was firm. We were roommates for 2 years. You helped me pass calculus. You listened to me cry about breakups. You were there when my dad died. This is what friends do. We show up. Grace felt tears again, but good tears this time. Grateful tears. She walked to Preston's car, got in, sat there for a moment. Her phone buzzed. Rebecca had texted, You've got this, call me tonight. Grace typed back, I will. Thank you. She started the car, drove back to Whole Foods, bought the milk, the crackers, everything on Preston's list. But something had shifted. Some small thing, and she showed her she wasn't alone anymore. She had help, she had a plan, or at least the beginning of a plan. Grace drove home, carried in the groceries, put everything away exactly where Preston liked it. He was in his office on a call. He waved at her, smiled, mouthed, thank you. Grace smiled back, performed, played the part. But inside, she was different, changed. The parking lot breakdown had cracked something open. Let light in, let air in. She wasn't okay yet, but she would be. One step at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. Grace went upstairs, lay down, put her hand on her belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent. We're going to be okay, Grace whispered. I promise, we're going to be okay. And for the first time, she meant it. 2 a.m. Grace couldn't sleep. Preston snored beside her, deep, even, peaceful. She envied that. The ability to sleep when everything was falling apart. Except nothing was falling apart for Preston. His world was exactly how he wanted it. Controlled, ordered, his. Grace slipped out of bed carefully, grabbed her phone, went downstairs. The kitchen was dark, cold. She turned on one small light over the sink, made herself chamomile tea, decaf. Everything was decaf now. Everything was approved, safe, controlled. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Preston had presented his post-nup idea last month. Just to protect both of us, he'd said. Grace had read it. Her MIT brain had parsed the legal language immediately. The post-nup gave her $50,000 for every year of marriage. They'd been married 4 years, $200,000 total. In exchange, she waived all claims to his business assets, his investments, his future earnings. It's fair, Preston had said. You brought nothing to the marriage financially. I'm being generous. Grace had wanted to laugh, had wanted to scream, had wanted to show him her phone, her Bitcoin wallet, her $1.2 billion. Instead, she'd said she needed time to think about it. That was 3 weeks ago. Preston brought it up every few days, casual, persistent, like water wearing down stone. Grace picked up her phone, opened her encrypted messaging app, the one Rebecca had told her to download. Secure, private. Preston couldn't track it. She typed, "Are you awake?" Rebecca responded immediately. "Yes, couldn't sleep. You okay? Can I call you?" Of course. Grace stepped out onto the back patio, closed the door. The night air was cool, clear. Stars visible despite the city lights. She called. Rebecca answered on the first ring. "Hey," Rebecca said. "What's going on?" "I can't stop thinking," Grace admitted, "about everything, about leaving, about what happens next." "That's normal. This is a big decision." Preston keeps pushing the post-nup. He brought it up again tonight, at dinner, in front of his mother. "Of course he did." Rebecca's voice hardened. "He's escalating. That's textbook abuser behavior. Public pressure, family pressure. Isolate you, make you feel like you have no choice. His mother said I should sign it, that it's reasonable, that I should be grateful." His mother is wrong, Grace. That post-nup is designed to leave you with nothing. $200,000 after 4 years of marriage? That's insulting, especially when you brought $1.2 billion. He doesn't know that. Exactly, he's making decisions based on false information, based on the assumption that you're dependent, powerless, but you're not. Grace wrapped her free arm around herself. The baby was active, kicking, moving, restless like her mother. "What if I tell him?" Grace asked. "What if I just show him the wallet? Prove I have money?" "Then what?" Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. "He suddenly respects you, treats you as an equal?" Grace, men like Preston don't change because circumstances change. They escalate. They find new ways to control. You don't know him. I know the pattern. I've seen it 100 times in my practice. Rich men, poor men, doesn't matter. The pattern is the same. Control, isolation, financial abuse, and pregnancy makes it worse. You're vulnerable. He knows that. He's using that. Grace closed her eyes, breathed, tried to stay calm. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough?" "Grace," Rebecca's voice was steady, certain. "You survived MIT. You wrote a thesis on decentralized finance. You had the foresight to buy Bitcoin in 2009. You've been sitting on a secret this big for 3 months without cracking. You are strong enough." "I don't feel strong." Nobody feels strong before they do the hard thing. You feel strong after, when you look back and realize you survived. Grace opened her eyes, looked up at the stars, at the vastness, at the universe that didn't care about her problems, that kept spinning regardless. "My mother died trapped," Grace said quietly, "in a bad marriage, too sick to leave, too scared even before she got sick. She told me right before she died that she wished she'd left years earlier, when she still had time. I'm sorry. I don't want to die trapped. I don't want my daughter to watch me shrink, to learn that this is normal, that this is love. Then don't." Rebecca's voice was clear, strong. "Choose differently. You have the resources. You have the power. You just have to use it." Grace put her hand on her belly, on the baby, on her daughter. "Tell me what to do," she said, "step by step. Tell me how to do this." "Okay." Grace heard papers rustling, Rebecca going into lawyer mode. "First, we need to document everything. Every time Preston controls money, checks your phone, makes you ask permission, criticizes your choices, write it down, dates, details, context. Why? Because if this gets messy, if he fights back, we need evidence. Pattern of behavior, financial abuse. We're building a case. A case like legal? Maybe, hopefully not, but better to be prepared." Rebecca paused. "Second, we need to move your Bitcoin, not sell it, but create legal structures, trusts, offshore accounts, walls between your assets and him. So even if he finds out, he can't touch it. How long does that take? For someone with your net worth? About 2 weeks if we move fast. I'll need your signature on documents. Power of attorney for the financial structuring, but we can do most of it remotely. Okay. Third, you need a safety plan. Where will you go if you need to leave quickly? Do you have your documents? Birth certificate? Social security card? Passport? Grace thought. They're in Preston's office. In his safe. Can you get them? Maybe, when he's at work, if I know the combination. Do you? Grace hesitated. I can figure it out. He uses the same password for everything. Good. Get those documents. Put them somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't access. Where? My office. Mail them to me, or bring them when you come in for our appointment. Appointment? Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Can you make it? Grace thought about her schedule, Preston's schedule, what excuse she could make. I'll make it, she said. Good. Rebecca's voice softened. Grace, I know this is scary. I know it feels impossible, but you're doing the right thing. Not just for you, for your daughter. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm overreacting? What if Preston really does love me and I'm just... Stop, Rebecca cut her off. Love doesn't look like control. Love doesn't look like isolation. Love doesn't look like humiliating your pregnant wife at a charity gala because she suggested a donation. That's not love. That's abuse. And you deserve better. The words landed. Hard. True. Grace felt something crack inside her, some final barrier, some last defense. She started crying again. Silent tears. The kind that came from deep exhaustion. Deep pain. I wanted him to be different, she whispered. When we met, he was so charming, so successful. I thought he'd take care of me. I thought I was lucky. You were in love. That's not stupid. That's human. But I let it happen. I let him take over. I gave up my job, my friends, my independence. I did that. Grace, listen to me. Rebecca's voice was fierce now. Abuse is insidious. It doesn't start with hitting. It starts with love, with care, with slowly taking away your choices until one day you wake up and realize you're trapped. That's not your fault. That's how it works. I should have seen it. You see it now. That's what matters. Grace wiped her eyes, breathed, tried to center herself. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, your office. I'll be ready. Bring any financial documents you have, bank statements, tax returns, anything related to the Bitcoin. We'll go through everything. Okay. And Grace, be careful. Don't let Preston know you're planning anything. Act normal. Play the role. It's safer that way. I know. They said goodbye. Grace ended the call. Stood there on the patio, alone in the dark. The universe kept spinning. Indifferent, vowed, but Grace felt smaller than usual. And also bigger, like she was simultaneously disappearing and expanding. She went back inside, made her way upstairs, slipped back into bed. Preston stirred. You okay? He mumbled. Bathroom, Grace whispered. Baby on my bladder. He rolled over, back to sleep. Grace lay there, stared at the ceiling, at the shadows, at the cracks in the plaster that looked like spider webs. She thought about her mother, about dying trapped, about regret. She thought about her daughter, about the life she wanted for her, the lessons she wanted to teach. And she thought about herself, about Grace Thompson, MIT graduate, Bitcoin holder, woman with $1.2 billion. That woman was still in there, under the fear, under the control, under the performance. It was time for her to come back. Grace closed her eyes. Tomorrow. Tomorrow it starts. Tomorrow she takes back her life. Rebecca's office was in downtown Boston. Glass and steel, 23rd floor, views of the harbor. Grace sat in the reception area. 2 o'clock. Exactly on time. She told Preston she had a doctor's appointment. Routine checkup. He'd barely looked up from his laptop. Don't forget to ask about that back pain, he'd said, and the swelling in your ankles. Grace had nodded, smiled, left. Now she sat in this office, this clean, professional, powerful space, waiting. A young associate came out. Ms. Whitmore? Ms. Foster is ready for you? Grace followed her down a hallway, past conference rooms, past other offices, to a corner suite at the end. Rebecca stood when Grace entered, professional, put together, but her eyes were warm, kind. Grace, come in, sit down. Can I get you anything? Water? Tea? Water would be good. The associate brought water, then left. Closed the door. Grace and Rebecca sat across from each other, desk between them, but it didn't feel confrontational. It felt safe. How are you? Rebecca asked. Tired, scared, ready. Well, that's a good combination, actually. Rebecca smiled. Means you're taking this seriously, but you're committed. Grace pulled out a folder, documents she gathered, bank statements, tax returns, the Bitcoin wallet information printed out. Rebecca spread them across her desk, started reviewing. Her expression grew more serious with each page. Grace, she said finally, this is more than financial abuse. Preston is planning something. What do you mean? Rebecca pointed to a bank statement. Look at this. 3 weeks ago, he moved $2 million out of your joint account. Put it in an account solely in his name. Grace leaned forward, stared at the numbers. She hadn't noticed. Preston handled all their banking. She rarely even looked. And here, Rebecca showed another document. He's been talking to a divorce attorney. See this charge? Consultation fee. Grace's blood ran cold. He's planning to divorce me? I think so. And I think he's planning to do it right after the baby's born, when you're most vulnerable, most dependent. But the postnup is insurance. He wants you to sign it first. Then he divorces you, takes everything, leaves you with $200,000 and a newborn. Grace felt dizzy, sick. The room tilted. Breathe, Rebecca said. Just breathe. Grace breathed in, out, focused on the physical, the chair under her, the water in her hand, the baby kicking inside her. He's been planning this, Grace said slowly, the whole time. I think so, or at least for the past few months. The timing suggests he's waiting until you give birth. Maximum leverage, maximum vulnerability. That's monstrous. That's Preston. Rebecca's voice was hard. Grace, we need to move fast. If he's planning to divorce you, we need to protect your assets, now. How? Rebecca opened her laptop, started typing. We create a trust. Put your Bitcoin in it. Irrevocable. He can't touch it. Even if he divorces you, even if he tries to claim community property. It was yours before marriage, stays yours after. Is that legal? Completely. You're protecting premarital assets. That's not just legal, it's smart. Rebecca worked quickly, pulling up documents, explaining terms. Grace tried to follow, tried to understand. The legal language was dense, complicated, but the basic idea was simple. Put walls between her money and Preston. Make sure he couldn't touch it, control it, take it. This will take about a week to finalize, Rebecca said. But once it's done, you're protected completely. What about the baby? Custody? That's trickier, but you have advantages. You're the mother, you're financially stable. You have no history of abuse or neglect. Unless Preston can prove you're unfit, custody defaults to you with him having visitation rights. He'll fight it. Let him fight. You have resources. You can hire the best lawyers. Put up walls he can't climb. Grace absorbed this. Tried to imagine the fight, the courtroom, the arguments. I don't want to fight, she said quietly. I just want to be free. I know, but sometimes freedom requires fighting. Sometimes you have to go through the fire to get to the other side. Grace looked at Rebecca, at her old friend, at this woman who was fighting for her. Why are you helping me, Grace is so. Rowley, why do you care? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because I've been where you are. What? Different circumstances, but similar pattern. After law school, I married someone, older, successful. He seemed perfect, until he wasn't. What happened? Control, subtle at first, then obvious. He wanted to manage my career, my money, my choices. I stayed for 2 years, telling myself it was love, that I was lucky, that he knew best. How did you leave? I didn't, he did, for someone younger, someone more controllable. Left me with nothing but debt he'd racked up in my name. Grace stared. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. Never again would I be financially dependent on anyone. Never again would I give someone else control of my life. Rebecca leaned forward. That's why I became a financial lawyer. That's why I help women protect their assets. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know what it takes to rebuild. Did you? Rebuild? Yes, slowly, painfully, but yes. And now I help others do the same. Rebecca smiled. You're not alone in this, Grace. There are thousands of women trapped in similar situations. You just happen to have resources most don't. Use them, break free, then help others do the same. The words settled over Grace. Heavy, meaningful, true. I want to, she said. I want to help others. Once I'm free, once I figure this out, I want to use the money for something good. You will. But first, you have to save yourself. Then you can save others. They worked for another hour, signing documents, reviewing plans, building walls. By the time Grace left, she had a folder full of papers, a plan, a path forward. She drove home slowly, carefully, her mind spinning. Preston was planning to divorce her, leave her with nothing, take advantage of her pregnancy, her vulnerability, her assumed dependence. But he didn't know about the Bitcoin, didn't know she had any power at all. Grace pulled into the driveway, sat in the car for a moment. She checked her phone. Bitcoin price update, $68,000. Her net worth, $1,258,000,000. Preston was planning to leave her with $200,000. The irony was staggering. Grace got out of the car, went inside, found Preston in his office. How was the doctor? He asked without looking up. Fine, everything's normal. Good, I'm ordering dinner. Ty okay? Sure. Grace went upstairs, changed clothes, lay down on the bed. She felt strange, disconnected, like she was watching herself from outside her body. This was her life, this house, this marriage, this man who was planning to betray her. But not for much longer. Grace put her hand on her belly. We're getting out, she whispered. Soon, I promise. The baby kicked, agreement, approval. Grace closed her eyes, let herself feel the fear, the anger, the determination. She was done playing small, done pretending, done being controlled. Starting now, she was taking back her power. One step at a time, one choice at a time. Starting now, 1 week later. Grace sat across from Preston at breakfast. Coffee for him, herbal tea for her, toast, eggs, the routine. I'm not signing the postnup, Grace said. Preston looked up, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. What? The postnuptial agreement. I'm not signing it. He set down his fork, carefully, deliberately. Why not? Because it's not fair. $200,000 after 4 years of marriage? That's insulting. Preston's eyes narrowed. Insulting? Grace, that's more than generous considering you brought nothing to this relationship. I brought myself, my time, my support. That has value. Does it? His voice turned cold. Because from where I sit, I've been supporting you for 4 years, housing you, feeding you, paying for everything while you've done what exactly? I was working until 8 months ago, making $60,000 a year, hardly a contribution when I'm pulling in millions. Grace felt her anger rising, controlled it. She'd practiced this conversation with Rebecca, knew what to say, how to say it. I'm not signing it, Preston. If you want a postnup, we can negotiate fair terms. But I won't sign something that leaves me with nothing. Nothing? Preston laughed. Harsh, mean. $200,000 is nothing? Compared to what you have? Yes. Oh, what I have? What I earn? What I built? What we built, I was there, supporting you, while you worked on your startup. While you took risks, I was there. Preston stood up, angry now, really angry. You were there doing what? Being pregnant? That's not work, Grace. That's biology. The words hit like a slap. Grace stood too, slower, heavier, 7.5 months pregnant, but standing. I want a lawyer to review any postnup before I sign, she said. A lawyer, man, Preston's voice rose. With what money? I pay for everything, including any lawyer you'd hire. That's not true. Yes, it is. Every dollar you spend comes from me. My accounts, my money. So if you want a lawyer, you'll be paying for it with my money to fight against me. Does that make sense to you? Grace met his eyes, calm, centered. I have my own money. Preston froze. What? I have my own money, money you don't know about, money that's mine. His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, calculation. What are you talking about? His voice was dangerously quiet. I'm talking about assets I had before we married. Assets that are mine, that you have no claim to. What assets? Grace, you had nothing when we met. You were making $60,000 a year living in a shitty apartment. I had investments, cryptocurrency, from grad school. Preston stared at her, processing. How much? Enough that I don't need to sign your postnup. Enough that I can hire my own lawyer. Enough that I'm not dependent on you. How much, Grace? She took a breath, said the number. $1.2 billion. The silence was absolute. Preston stood there, mouth open, eyes wide, frozen. Then he laughed, harsh, disbelieving. You're insane. I'm not. $1.2 billion. Grace, do you hear yourself? That's delusional. Pregnancy has actually made you crazy. I bought Bitcoin in 2009. 100 coins. $800 total. I forgot about them until 3 months ago. Preston's laughter died. He stared at her, really stared, looking for the joke. You're serious? Yes. Show me. Grace pulled out her phone and opened the Bitcoin wallet app, showed him the screen. Preston grabbed the phone, stared at the numbers. His face went white, then red. This isn't possible, he whispered. It's possible, it's real, and it's mine, Adine. He looked up at her, eyes blazing. You've had this the whole time? I first thought about it. I only rediscovered it 3 months ago. 3 months? His voice rose. You've known for 3 months and you didn't tell me? No. Why not? I'm your husband. Because of this. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. Like it's yours. Like you have some right to it. But you don't, Preston. It's mine. I earned it before I even met you. Preston's hands shook. He set down the phone. This changes everything. Yes, it does. We need to talk about how to invest this, how to manage it. We could, no. No? No, you don't get to manage it. Control it. Make decisions about it. It's mine, Preston. Not ours, mine. His face darkened. That's not how marriage works. Apparently it is, because that's exactly how you've treated your money. Yours. Not ours, yours. I'm just applying the same logic. That's different. How? Because I earned my money through work, through business. You earned yours by accident, by forgetting about it. That's not the same. Grace felt something inside her snap, some final thread of patience, of trying to be understanding. Get out, she said. What? Get out of this house. Now, I'm done talking to you, folks. This is my house, and I can buy 10 more just like it. Get out. Preston stared at her, rage and disbelief warring on his face. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was marrying you. The words hung in the air. Final. Irrevocable. Preston grabbed his keys, his phone, walked to the door. He stopped, turned back. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You can't just watch me. He left. The door slammed. Grace heard his car start. Drive away. She stood in the kitchen, shaking, adrenaline coursing through her. She'd done it, said it, stood up to him, and it felt terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Grace's phone rang. Rebecca. How did it go? Rebecca asked. I told him. And? He left, angry, said it's not over. It's not. He'll come back, with lawyers probably. But Grace, you did it. You stood up to him. I'm scared. That's okay. Being scared and doing it anyway, that's courage. Grace sat down, suddenly exhausted. What now? Now you wait. Let him cool off. Let him realize he can't control you anymore. And we prepare for whatever comes next. Will he try to fight me? Probably, but Grace, you have all the power. He just doesn't know it yet. They talked for a few more minutes, strategizing, planning. When they hung up, Grace sat alone in the silent house. She'd done it, crossed the line, told the truth. There was no going back now. Grace put her hand on her belly. The baby was quiet, sleeping probably. It's just us now, kiddo, Grace whispered. You and me, we're going to be okay. The baby kicked once, gentle, like agreement. Grace smiled, tired, scared, but free. Finally free. 2 in the morning. Grace couldn't sleep. Again. But this time Preston wasn't there. He hadn't come home. She'd gotten one text hours ago. Staying at a hotel, need to think. Grace had typed back. Okay. That was it. The sum total of their communication. Grace sat in the nursery, the room they'd prepared together. Yellow walls, white furniture. Everything perfect. Everything ready for a baby who would be born into a broken home. She thought about calling Rebecca, but it was too late. 2 in the morning. Rebecca was sleeping probably. Normal people were sleeping. But not Grace. She couldn't sleep. Couldn't shut off her brain. She thought about Preston, about where he was, what he was thinking. Was he angry? Hurt? Planning revenge? She thought about her mother, about those final days in the hospital, about the regret in her eyes. She thought about her daughter, about the life this baby would have. Single mother, complicated family dynamics. Explaining why mommy and daddy don't live together. Was she doing the right thing? Or was she destroying her family over money? Over pride? Over fear? Grace started crying, quiet tears at first. Then big, ugly sobs. She'd ruined everything. Blown up her marriage. Alienated her husband. Created chaos for her unborn child. Maybe Preston was right. Maybe she was crazy. Pregnancy hormones, irrational thinking. Maybe she should have just signed the postnup, kept the peace, made it work. Except she couldn't. She knew that. Deep down. Under the doubt and fear. She knew. Preston didn't love her. Mama. Not really. He loved control. He loved power. He loved having someone dependent on him. But love, real love, the kind that sees you and values you and respects you, that had died a long time ago, if it had ever existed. Grace wiped her eyes, stood up, walked to the window. The neighborhood was dark, quiet, everyone sleeping, living their normal lives. She was the outlier, the weird one, the pregnant woman with $1 billion and a destroyed marriage. Grace's phone buzzed. A text, she grabbed it, hoping it was Preston, hoping he'd come to his senses, hoping they could fix this. But it wasn't Preston, it was Vivian, her college friend, the one she'd been secretly helping with money. Anonymous donations that kept Vivian's electricity on, rent paid, food in the fridge. The text said, "You still awake?" Grace typed back, "Yes, can't sleep. Can I call?" "Sure." The phone rang. Grace answered. "Hey," Vivian said. "I'm sorry it's so late. I couldn't sleep either. And I wanted to check on you." "Why?" "Because you texted me yesterday, something about Preston, about trouble in your marriage, and I've been worried." Grace had forgotten. She'd texted Vivian in a moment of panic, before the confrontation, before everything. "Things are complicated," Grace said. "Want to talk about it?" And Grace did. She wanted to talk, needed to talk, to someone who knew her before Preston, before all this. So she told Vivian everything. The Bitcoin, the $1 billion, Preston's control, the postnup, the fight, all of it. Vivian was silent for a long time after Grace finished. "Holy shit," she said finally. "Yeah." "Grace, you have $1 billion?" "Yes." "And Preston's been treating you like you're poor, dependent, like you need him?" "Yes." "That's insane. That's actually insane." "I know." "No, you don't know." Vivian's voice was getting louder, angry. "Grace, do you know what I would do if I had that kind of money? If I had that kind of security? I'd be free, completely free. I wouldn't put up with any man's bullshit for a single second. It's not that simple. It absolutely is that simple. You have power, real power, and you're sitting here crying at 2 in the morning like you're the victim. But you're not the victim, Grace. You're the most powerful person in this whole situation. You just won't use that power. The words stung, true and harsh. I'm trying, Grace said. Are you? Because from where I sit, you told Preston the truth and then let him leave. You're waiting for him to come back, to forgive you, to give you permission to be powerful. But fuck that, Grace. You don't need his permission. I'm pregnant. I'm scared. I don't know what I'm doing. Then figure it out. But stop waiting for some man to tell you it's okay to be rich, to be powerful, to take up space. That's not how this works. Mostly Grace felt tears again, but angry tears this time. At herself, at the situation, at everything. You're right, she said. I know I'm right, and you know it too. You're just scared to admit it. I am scared. That's okay. But Grace, do you know what I would do for the kind of options you have? For the kind of security? I'm raising a kid alone, working 2 jobs, barely keeping my head above water. And you have everything, and you're throwing it away because you're scared of being alone. I'm not throwing it away. Aren't you? What's your plan? Hope Preston comes around? Hope he suddenly respects you? Hope he magically transforms into a better person? That's not a plan. That's a fantasy. Grace absorbed the words, the truth of them. What should I do? She asked quietly. Leave. Actually leave. Take your money. Take your baby when she's born. Build a new life. Stop waiting for Preston to give you permission. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm overreacting? Grace, Vivian's voice softened. You called me at 2 in the morning crying. Does that sound like someone who's overreacting? Or does that sound like someone who knows deep down that something is very wrong? The question hung in the air. Grace knew the answer, had always known. She just hadn't wanted to admit it. Something is very wrong, she whispered. Yeah, it is. And only you can fix it. They talked for another hour. Vivian told stories about her own bad relationship, about the father of her child, about how hard it was to leave, but how much better life was after. It's not easy, Vivian said. Single motherhood is hard, but it's better than teaching your kid that abuse is normal. That control is love. That making yourself small is how you stay safe. That's what my friend Rebecca said. Rebecca's smart. Listen to her and listen to yourself. That voice inside you that's been screaming for months that something's wrong, that voice is right. Trust it. When they finally hung up, Grace felt different, clearer, calmer. She was still scared, still uncertain, but she wasn't alone. She had Rebecca, she had Vivian, she had resources, and she had herself. Grace Thompson, MIT graduate, Bitcoin holder, woman with $1.2 billion. That woman was coming back, slowly, painfully, but coming back. Grace went to the kitchen, made more tea, sat at the table. She pulled out her phone, opened her notes app, started writing. Things I know to be true. Preston doesn't respect me. Preston wants to control my money. Preston is planning to divorce me anyway. I am not powerless. I have resources. I have choices. I deserve better. My daughter deserves better. I can do this. I will do this. She read the list, added one more line. The hardest part isn't leaving. It's admitting I should have left a long time ago. Grace sat there as the sky started to lighten, as dawn approached, as a new day began. She was tired, emotionally exhausted, physically drained, but she was also ready, finally ready, to leave, to fight, to claim her power, to become who she was always meant to be. Starting now, 1 week later. Rebecca's office again, this time with Vivian. Grace had asked her to come, needed the support. Rebecca spread documents across the conference table. Preston hired a lawyer, a good one. They're threatening to fight for custody, claiming you're unstable. Unstable? Grace's voice rose. I'm not unstable. They're claiming pregnancy hormones, irrational behavior. They're using the fact that you kept the Bitcoin secret as evidence of deception. They're painting you as someone who can't be trusted. That's insane. That's strategy. Rebecca's voice was calm, professional. They're trying to scare you, make you think you'll lose custody, so you'll settle, sign something favorable to Preston. Will I? Lose custody? Not a chance. You're financially stable. You have no history of abuse or neglect. You're the mother. Unless they can prove serious unfitness, custody defaults to you. But they're threatening it because threats are cheap. Actually, winning in court? That's hard, expensive, time-consuming. They're hoping you'll fold before it gets that far. Vivian leaned forward. So what do? We call their bluff. Rebecca pulled out another document. Here's our counter proposal. Grace files for divorce first. She seeks primary custody with Preston having reasonable visitation. She offers him $2 million as a settlement. Clean break. No ongoing claims. $2 million? Grace frowned. That's too much. It's strategic. Shows you're being reasonable. Generous even. If Preston refuses, he looks greedy. Unreasonable. Judges notice that. What if he says yes? Then you paid $2 million to be free of him. Considering your net worth, that's nothing. That's the best investment you'll ever make. Grace thought about it. $2 million, 0.002% of her wealth. Rounding error. Freedom. Okay, let's do it. Rebecca started pulling up documents. I'll file tomorrow. Once this is submitted, everything changes. You are officially leaving him, officially starting over. How long will it take? Depends on whether Preston fights. If he accepts the settlement, 2 months. If he fights, could be a year or more. A year? Maybe less, but you need to be prepared for a fight. Grace felt panic rising on. I'm due in 6 weeks. I can't fight through a divorce while taking care of a newborn. You won't be fighting, your lawyers will. That's what we're for. Rebecca's voice was steady, certain. Grace, you have resources. Use them. Hire the best lawyers, the best child care, the best everything. Make this as easy on yourself as possible. Vivian nodded. She's right. You have money, actual money, not Preston's money, yours. Use it. It feels wrong somehow. Using money to solve problems. Why? Vivian's voice was sharp. Rich people do it all the time. They hire help, lawyers, nannies. They make their lives easier. Why shouldn't you? Grace didn't have a good answer. Old thinking, Rebecca said gently. You're still thinking like someone who's poor, someone who has to struggle. But you're not poor, Grace. You're one of the richest women in America. Start acting like it. The words landed. Hard. True. Grace had been living like a poor person. Constrained. Careful. Afraid to take up space. Even after discovering the Bitcoin. Even after knowing her net worth. She'd been playing small, acting small, being small, because that's what Preston wanted. That's what felt safe. But safe wasn't the same as right. Small wasn't the same as happy. Okay, Grace said, what do I need to do? Rebecca smiled. First, you need a place to live. Somewhere that's yours, not Preston's. I could rent something. You could buy something, eh? Grace, you can afford any house in Boston, any neighborhood. Buy something, make it yours. The idea was dizzying. Buy a house, just buy it, with her own money. Where would I even start? I have a real estate lawyer. She specializes in high net worth clients. Discreet, professional. I'll make the introduction. Okay. Second, you need staff, a nanny for after the baby comes, a housekeeper, a personal assistant maybe, someone to handle the logistics of your life so you can focus on being a mother. That feels excessive. Does it, or does it feel smart? Grace, you're about to be a single mother with a newborn, running a household, managing a fortune, going through a divorce. You need help, accept that. Grace nodded, slowly. Okay, help, I need help. Third, you need security, financial security, your assets protected. I've already set up the trusts, but we need ongoing management. I know some people, wealth managers who specialize in cryptocurrency, They can help. I don't want to lose it. You won't. The Bitcoin is secure. But having professionals manage it? That's smart. That's what rich people do. There was that phrase again. Rich people. Grace was rich people now. She needed to start thinking like it. They spent the next 3 hours going through details, plans, strategies. By the time Grace left, she had a list. Tasks, people to call, decisions to make. It felt overwhelming, but also empowering. She wasn't waiting anymore, wasn't hoping things would magically improve. She was taking action, making choices, building a new life. Vivian walked with her to the parking garage. How are you doing? Really? Scared, but okay. Better than okay, actually. You're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to be amazing. I hope so. I know so. Vivian hugged her, careful of the belly. Call me if you need anything, anytime, day or night. Thank you for everything, for being honest with me, for being here. That's what friends do. Grace drove home, except it wasn't home anymore. It was Preston's house, the place she was leaving. She started looking at real estate listings on her phone. Houses, condos, penthouses, places she could afford. Places that were hers. It felt strange, exciting, terrifying. Grace was building a new life, brick by brick, choice by choice. And for the first time in years, she was doing it on her terms. 3 weeks later, Grace woke up at 2 in the morning, wet, confused, then realized her water had broken. She grabbed her phone, called Rebecca. It's time, Grace said. The baby's coming. I'll meet you at the hospital, 20 minutes. Grace hung up, started getting ready. The hospital bag was packed, by the door, ready to go. She was alone. Preston didn't know. She hadn't told him. Didn't want him there for this. This was hers, her moment, her daughter. Grace drove herself to the hospital. Contractions starting, regular, painful, real. She checked in, got a room, changed into the hospital gown. Rebecca arrived, Vivian too, both of them ready, supportive. There. You've got this, Rebecca said. We're here, Vivian added. Whatever you need. Grace labored through the night. The pain was intense, overwhelming, but she breathed through it, focused. She thought about her mother, about giving birth to her, about the strength that required, the courage. She thought about her daughter, about meeting her, about holding her, about promising her a better life. She thought about herself, about Grace Thompson, about who she'd been, who she'd become, who she was now. At 6:15 in the morning, after 16 hours of labor, Grace gave birth to a daughter. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect, healthy, beautiful. The nurses cleaned her, wrapped her, placed her in Grace's arms. Grace looked down at her daughter, at this tiny human, this miracle, this future. Hi, baby, Grace whispered. I'm your mama. The baby opened her eyes, dark blue, aware, seeing. I'm going to call you Hope, Grace said. Hope Elizabeth, because that's what you are. My hope, my new beginning. Tears ran down Grace's face. Good tears, happy tears, grateful tears. Vivian and Rebecca stood on either side of the bed, smiling, crying too. She's perfect, Vivian said. She's you, Rebecca added. Strong, beautiful, powerful. Grace held her daughter, marveled at the tiny fingers, the small nose, the rosebud mouth. You're going to have choices, Hope, Grace whispered. Your choices. You are going to know your worth, your power. You're going to take up space in this world. And nobody is going to make you small. I promise you that. Hope yawned, unimpressed by promises, focused on being brand new. Grace laughed, first real laugh in months. Fair enough, she said. We'll work on the life lessons later. Right now, you just focus on being perfect. A nurse came in. There's someone here asking about you. Preston Whitmore says he's the father? Grace's happiness dimmed. How did he know? Hospital automatically notifies emergency contacts when someone checks in for labor. Of course, Grace had forgotten to update her contact information. Let him in, she said, but just for a few minutes. The nurse nodded, left. Grace looked at Rebecca. I have to do this. He's her father. He has a right to meet her. I know, but we're staying right here the whole time. Thank you. Preston entered. He looked tired, disheveled. His eyes went immediately to the baby. Can I hold her? He asked. Grace hesitated, then nodded, carefully transferred Hope to Preston's arms. He looked down at his daughter. His face softened, transformed. For a moment, Grace saw the man she'd married, the one she'd loved, before everything went wrong. She's beautiful, Preston whispered. Yes. What's her name? Hope. Hope Elizabeth. Preston nodded, tears in his eyes. That's perfect. They stood there for a moment, the three of them. Family, sort of. I'm sorry, Preston said suddenly, for everything, for how I treated you, for not seeing you, for being so focused on control that I lost sight of love. Grace didn't know what to say, didn't trust this sudden vulnerability. I don't expect you to forgive me, Preston continued. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know, I see it now, how badly I messed up, how much I hurt you. Thank you for saying that. Can we try again? Start over? For her. For Hope. Grace looked at him, really looked, saw the hope in his eyes, the desperation, the genuine emotion. And she felt nothing. No desire to reconcile. No urge to give him another chance. That part of her heart was closed, locked, done. No, she said quietly. We can't try again. But we can co-parent. We can be civil. We can both love Hope without being together. Preston's face fell, but he nodded. I understand. He handed Hope back. Hope, carefully, gently. I'll fight for visitation, he said. I want to be in her life. I know, and you should be. She deserves to know her father. Thank you. Preston looked at Grace one more time. You're the strongest person I know. I should have told you that. Every day, I should have celebrated your strength instead of trying to diminish it. Yes, you should have. He left. The room felt lighter without him. Rebecca came closer. You okay? Yeah, I am. For the first time in a long time, I actually am. Grace looked down at Hope, at her daughter, her future. Everything had changed. Everything was changing. And more would change still. But right now, in this moment, Grace had everything she needed. Her daughter, her friends, her freedom, and $1.2 billion to build whatever life she wanted. We're going to be okay, Grace whispered to Hope. Better than okay, we're going to be extraordinary. Hope made a small sound, content, peaceful. Grace settled back against the pillows, exhausted, happy, free. The future stretched ahead, unknown, uncertain, full of possibility, and for the first time, Grace was ready for it. 6 months later, Grace stood in her new penthouse, downtown Boston, harbor views, 3 bedrooms, everything modern, clean, hers. Hope slept in the nursery, 6 months old, growing fast, already laughing, already curious about everything. Grace had bought the penthouse 3 months ago, paid cash, decorated it herself, made it home. Preston had signed the divorce papers, taken the $2 million settlement. They had joint custody. He saw Hope every weekend, was trying, actually trying to be a good father. It wasn't perfect, but it was working, better than Grace had hoped. Now she stood in her home office, looking at documents spread across her desk. The Hope Foundation, seed funding, $50 million. Mission, financial literacy and escape funds for women in abusive relationships. Rebecca had helped her set it up. Legal structure, board of directors, mission statement, everything official. Today was the launch, press conference, media coverage, going public with her story. Sort of. Grace was still keeping some privacy, not revealing her exact net worth, not showing her full hand, but enough. Enough to make a difference. Enough to help others. Vivian was on the board, so was Rebecca. They'd recruited other women, survivors, advocates, people who understood. Grace's phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. Ready? Grace typed back. As ready as I'll ever be. She checked on Hope one more time. The nanny was there. Excellent woman, kind of wild. competent, worth every penny Grace paid her. "I'll be back in a few hours," Grace said. "Take your time. We'll be fine." Grace took a car to the press conference. Downtown hotel, conference room, cameras, reporters, everything official. She stood at the podium, looked out at the faces, took a breath. "Thank you for coming," she began. "My name is Grace Whitmore. 6 months ago, I was in an abusive relationship, financially controlled by my husband, told I had no value, no worth, no power." The room was silent, attentive. What my husband didn't know was that I had significant assets, money from an early investment in Bitcoin, money that gave me options, resources, the ability to leave. She paused, let that sink in. I was lucky. Most women in abusive situations don't even have those resources. They're truly trapped, truly dependent, unable to leave because they can't afford to. Grace looked at her notes, at the mission statement she'd crafted with Rebecca and Vivian. The Hope Foundation exists to change that. We provide financial literacy education, emergency funds for women who need to leave dangerous situations, legal support, childcare support, everything necessary to make leaving possible. Applause. Genuine. Supportive. Grace continued. Outline the programs. The funding. The vision. She talked about Bitcoin, about cryptocurrency, about how she'd accidentally become wealthy, about luck and timing and holding on when everyone said to sell. She talked about her daughter, about wanting to build a better world for her, a world where women had choices, power, freedom. When she finished, the reporters had questions, lots of questions. Grace answered some, deflected others, maintained her privacy while being open about her mission. After an hour, it was over. The press conference ended. Grace stepped away from the podium. A young woman approached, maybe 25, nervous. "Ms. Whitmore, can I talk to you?" "Of course. I just thank you for this, for being open about what happened to you. I'm in a similar situation. And hearing you talk about leaving, about having options, it made me realize I have options too. Maybe not Bitcoin money, but options." Grace felt tears. You do have options. And if you need help, the foundation can provide resources. Really? Really, that's why we exist. The woman hugged her, quick, grateful, then disappeared into the crowd. Grace stood there, feeling the weight of it, the responsibility, the privilege of being able to help. Rebecca appeared. "That was amazing. You were amazing. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for trusting me." They went back to Grace's penthouse. Vivian was already there. She'd watched the press conference online. "You're famous now," Vivian said. "The Bitcoin billionaire, the mysterious woman who became wealthy by accident." "I don't want to be famous. I want to help people." "You can do both." Hope woke up, started crying. Grace went to get her. She picked up her daughter, held her close, breathed in the baby smell, the innocence, the possibility. "Your mama made a foundation today," Grace whispered, "named after you. Hope, because that's what we're giving people. Hope." Hope gurgled. Unimpressed, focused on being hungry, Grace laughed, brought her to the living room, started feeding her while Rebecca and Vivian discussed foundation business. This was her life now. Mother, philanthropist, woman with resources using them for good. It wasn't what she'd planned, wasn't what she'd expected, but it was good, better than good. Grace looked around her home, at her friends, at her daughter. She'd lost so much, her marriage, her plans, her vision of the future, but she'd gained more, freedom, power, purpose, and $1.2 billion to make a difference. Not bad for someone who'd forgotten about an $800 investment. Grace smiled, looked at Hope, at her daughter, her future. "We did it, baby girl," she whispered. "We made it through. And now we change the world." Hope finished eating, smiled, content. Grace held her close, grateful, happy, free. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility, full of hope. And Grace was ready for all of it. 1 year later, Grace stood backstage at a tech conference. The same conference where she'd met Preston 7 years ago. Full circle, closing the loop. But everything was different now. She wasn't here as someone's wife, someone's plus one, someone's accessory. She was here as the keynote speaker, the mysterious Bitcoin billionaire, the woman who'd accidentally become one of the richest people in tech. Hope was with her nanny, back at the hotel, 1 year old now, walking, talking, growing fast. Preston saw Hope regularly. He'd gotten therapy, was actually working on himself. They weren't friends, probably never would be, but they were civil, cooperative, good enough. Grace wore a simple dress, professional, powerful, comfortable. She thought about the last time she'd been at this conference, 7 years ago, young, naive, just starting her career. Preston had been on stage, giving a talk about disruption, about changing the world. He'd been confident, charismatic, magnetic. She'd been in the audience, impressed, attracted, ready to fall in love. If she could go back and warn that younger version of herself, would she? Would she tell herself to run, to avoid Preston, to protect herself maybe? But then she wouldn't have hope, wouldn't have this journey, wouldn't have become who she was now, so maybe it all happened exactly as it should. 2 minutes, Ms. Whitmore, a stage manager said. Grace nodded, took a breath, centered herself. She walked on stage. The lights were bright, blinding. The audience was huge. Thousands of people. She got to the podium, looked out at the faces, saw recognition, curiosity, respect. Thank you for having me, Grace began. 7 years ago, I was in this same conference, sitting in the audience, watching others on this stage, thinking they knew something I didn't, had something I didn't, were something I wasn't. She paused. Let them absorb. I was wrong. They weren't smarter than me, weren't better than me. They just had more confidence, more audacity, more willingness to take up space. The audience was quiet, listening. Grace continued, told her story, the Bitcoin purchase in 2009, forgetting about it, rediscovering it, the shock, the secret. She talked about Preston, about financial abuse, about control disguised as care, about how easy it is to lose yourself in a relationship. She talked about leaving, about fear, about courage, about choosing yourself even when it's hard. She talked about hope, about her daughter, about wanting to build a better world. The thing about power, Grace said, is that it's not about money. Money helps. Money creates options. But real power is internal. It's knowing your worth, refusing to be small, taking up space. She looked out at the audience, saw women leaning forward, engaged, recognizing themselves in her story. For years, I made myself small. I let someone else define my value. I gave away my power because I thought that's what love required. But love doesn't require sacrifice of self. Love celebrates self. Love makes you bigger, not smaller. Applause, genuine, sustained. Grace continued, talked about the Hope Foundation, about the women they'd helped, over 200 in the past year, women who'd escaped abusive situations, started new lives, found freedom. She talked about Bitcoin, about cryptocurrency, about the future of money, about decentralization and power shifting away from institutions toward individuals. The future is about choice, she said, about having options, about not being dependent on anyone or anything. That's what cryptocurrency represents. That's what the Hope Foundation represents. That's what I represent. Standing ovation, the entire audience on their feet, applauding, cheering. Grace stood there. Let it wash over her. The recognition, the respect, the validation. This was power. This, real power. Not control, not domination, but influence, impact, change. After the speech, Grace did a Q&A, answered questions about Bitcoin, about investing, about leaving abusive relationships, about raising a daughter alone. When it ended, dozens of people came up to her, wanting to talk, to share their stories, to thank her. A young woman approached, maybe 23, nervous but determined. Ms. Whitmore, I just bought my first Bitcoin. Grace smiled. That's wonderful. Because of you, because of your story, I'm going to hold it, just like you did. And maybe someday it'll give me options too. Freedom, power. Maybe it will. Grace put her hand on the woman's arm. But remember, the Bitcoin is just a tool. Real power comes from knowing your worth, from refusing to be small, from choosing yourself. Always. The woman nodded, emotional. Thank you. Grace watched her walk away, felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the privilege. She was changing lives, making a difference, not just with money, with story, with example, with courage. Rebecca appeared. She'd been in the audience, smiling, proud. That was incredible, True Rebecca said. Thank you for everything, for helping me, for believing in me, for being there. Always. They walked out together. Grace checked her phone, text from the nanny, photo of Hope, sleeping peacefully. Grace's heart swelled. Love, gratitude, joy. This was her life now. Mother, philanthropist, speaker, advocate, Bitcoin billionaire. Woman who chose herself. It wasn't perfect. She still had hard days. Still struggled sometimes. Still missed the idea of what her marriage could have been. But she didn't miss Preston. Didn't miss being small. Didn't miss playing a role that didn't fit. Grace got in a car, headed back to the hotel, back to Hope, back to her real life. She looked out the window, at the Boston streets, at the city she called home, at the future stretching ahead. She thought about that girl in the audience, the one who just bought her first Bitcoin, who was holding it, hoping it would grow, hoping it would give her options someday. Grace hoped so too. Hope that woman would hold on, would be patient, would use her wealth wisely when it came. And she hoped that woman would remember that the real power wasn't in the money. It was in choosing yourself, in refusing to be small, in taking up space. That was the lesson. That was the gift. That was the legacy Grace wanted to leave. For Hope, for that young woman, for all the women who'd come after. Grace smiled, closed her eyes, breathed. She'd made it. From trapped to free, from powerless to powerful, from hidden to visible. And she was just getting started. The future was bright, full of possibility, full of hope. Grace was ready for all of it. Grace stood on that stage, looking out at thousands of faces, finally visible, finally powerful, finally free. She'd gone from trapped to triumphant, from hidden to heard, from controlled to commanding her own destiny. And she did it by refusing to stay small, by choosing herself, by using her accidental fortune to build something that mattered. The Hope Foundation has now helped over 500 women escape financial abuse. 500 women who found their power, their freedom, their hope. If this story resonated with you, if Grace's journey touched something in you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Share your thoughts, your own stories, your own moments of choosing yourself. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, stories about women reclaiming their power, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories coming, more women, more courage, more hope. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay invisible. Grace learned that, and now you know her story. Thank you for listening.